The earpiece doesn't have anything. Good morning, everyone. Okay. My name is Olufolake Kumapayi. I'm the head of SME at Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. Just a brief introduction on LSETF, the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. It was established in 2016 to tackle the issue of unemployment and enable job and wealth creation for residents in Lagos. Through LSETF loan programs, Lagos residents realize their aspiration by providing leverage and access to finance for them. LSETF also supports the strengthening of micro, small, and medium enterprises through capacity building initiatives like we are doing today and access to market initiatives. The fund also trains and places unemployed Lagos residents in jobs while driving innovative solutions for businesses and residents within the Lagos state. The topic of our webinar today is Business to Consumer, the concept of direct sales. Just a brief background. Business to consumer is a commerce model between business and an individual consumer. It's popularly known as B2C. While B2C applies to any type of direct to consumer selling, it has come to be associated with running an online store, also known as e-commerce or retailing. It differs from business to business, that is B2B, in the sense that B2C companies focus on selling their products or services directly to customers as opposed to other businesses. Business to consumer is by far the most popular method of business for those in the e-commerce stock line of business. Having and understanding the skills to this marketing model is the first step to becoming a successful business owner. Therefore, it is very imperative to hold a webinar session on business to consumer, the concept of direct sales, for business owners who seek to get practical tips, strategies on how to learn on the tips and arts of marketing directly to their customers. So I'll just go on to introduce our speaker of today, who is Adedeji Layade. Adedeji Layade is currently a brand manager at Guinness Nigeria with over 11 years cross-sector experience in media, relationship management, product brand management, and marketing in the broadcasting, banking, fintech, and FMCG sectors, respectively. He holds an MSc from the Ashton Business School on Strategic Marketing Management. Prior to joining Guinness Nigeria, Deji worked as a quick teller product marketing manager with InterSwitch, leading some of the transitions from pure financial services to a full lifestyle brand. Before joining InterSwitch, Deji worked as head media and reputation management at Wema Bank after working as the first brand manager of Africa, first fully digital bank, Alert by Wema, building the now well-known brand from launch. In his early career days, he started off as an on-air personality at Radio Continental, now known as Max FM, before moving to the banking sector at First Bank, where he worked as relationship manager and further transitioned as product manager for youth products. Please join me in welcoming Deji Layade to the webinar this morning as it takes us the sessions on business to consumer webinar. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you for the introduction. So I have a small deck that I would share, but I don't know how you want us to coordinate this. Funke, do you want us to take questions in between, or do you want us to take the questions after? Okay, can you hear me? Okay, are you there? Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
I can't hear you.
Okay. I think people in the webinar can hear me. I'll just go straight into it. I would share a small presentation. But I would rather prefer I have a bit of interactive moments during the presentation. I know that the time is limited and short, but at some point I would want to get some reactions from people. When the time comes, I would probably call for maybe comments in the comment section, just to be able to get practical sense of how people have been able to interact. So the formats for the presentation today is, the topic is business to consumer, the concept of direct sales. And I'm a strong advocate of understanding the consumer. In this case, when we speak about business to consumers directly, it is one of the very few cases where your consumer is the same as your customer. In other cases, if you were to be a business to business sort of interaction, you can go further to say, oh, you know what? Your consumer does not necessarily have to be your customer, right? The businesses that you supply are your customers, but the consumers that use your end product are the actual consumers. You might be able to have some interaction both through the line. But what I do know for sure is we cannot talk about sales direct to consumers from business without sort of looking at consumer behavior and how people buy and how people interact. I know that there's a whole lot of cry for e-commerce, internet, social media marketing, but the truth is that principles that has always existed, that would always exist. It's just how we're able to plug in using different channels that has elevated from the physical channel to the digital world. So today I'm going to be taking us through consumer behavior, consumer buying process, how a consumer chooses to buy a product or a service, what drives the consumer to buy, based on his motive and what the consumer needs. And we talk briefly about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and then we talk about I would say an advertising principle that helps us connect our interactions and what we do somewhere along the line where consumer is trying to make a decision. So what this does is it helps us connect to the consumer at a point where it's most important, or through the line till the consumer is able to make that final decision. Thank you for joining the webinar once again. So I'll go straight into it, right? And this is where I need a bit of interaction from people, right? The typical consumer buying journey of a typical consumer, right, is to identify a problem, which is number one, problem recognition, right? When a typical consumer recognizes that there's a problem or there's a need for something, the reason why it's called problem recognition is doesn't necessarily mean that it's a need. It can be just a want, but they realize, oh, a problem has occurred. The second stage they go into is information search, right? Once they are searching for information to be able to look for sources of, that item or that service they need, they check around different sources. They'll probably look online, ask a friend, speak to people generally all over the place. And once they're able to, get enough information, they start to evaluate alternatives. Just to be able to mix and match between, oh, A has this, B has something similar to it. And then, they evaluate the process of which one is best to choose between all of the options I have with the information I have gotten. And then they would make a final purchase decision. Once they decide to purchase, they'll go ahead to purchase. Now, very importantly, a consumer would always do a post-purchase evaluation, right? Just to come back to say, am I satisfied with the product I have bought? Am I fine with it? Is it value for money? And more often time than not, these 6 processes are the process a consumer will typically go through, but does not necessarily mean that the consumer would go through the entire 6 process. Now, I'm going to go to another slide to explain to us, depending on what the consumer is buying, right? Some of these stages might essentially be skipped, right? So it doesn't mean that every consumer at every point in time has to go through these 6 stages, but these are the complete 6 stages that exist when a consumer is buying. A consumer will be buying a particular product and probably just go to make a purchase decision. Or if the purchase decision for what they want to buy is, so for instance, the product is not available, they can move back to level 3 and start to evaluate alternatives and then go ahead to make the decision and then purchase and then do a post-purchase evaluation. Now, that takes us to the next slide. As I said earlier, depending on what the consumer is trying to buy, the stages are 6. They would skip some stages. In other cases, they will start from the beginning to the end. Now, there are typically 4 ways consumers buy. And number 1 is the routine response. And look at it from a point of, if a customer wants to buy a loaf of bread, right? A loaf of bread is a low involvement product. You don't need to think too deeply, right? All you just have to do is to realize, oh, I need bread in the house. And then you go ahead to go to the closest place to you, look at the breads that are available, pick one, pay, and go. A case of, oh, you want to buy toothpaste or you want to buy detergents because you need to wash clothes, which are typically fast-moving consumer goods in the category of the likes of soaps and the rest of it. There are routine purchases, right? It's most likely you use the same brand of toothpaste every time. Now, what that means is that the same brand of toothpaste you buy all the time, you are going out because there's a problem. You've run out of toothpaste. And the first thing you're going to go and look for is the brand of toothpaste you buy. Meaning that you've recognized the problem and you want to go ahead to make a direct purchase. You have skipped about 2 or 3 levels. Now, in some cases where you look for the toothpaste you normally buy because it's a routine purchase, you buy the toothpaste regularly and it is unavailable. Then you move back to looking for alternatives. Which other option can I buy? And look at the one that you think is best for value for money within the ones that are available at the time, and you make the purchase. This is the easiest purchase for a consumer to make because it's a routine response purchase. They don't need to think too deeply to it. Now, category 2 will be limited decision making. And it says, if you're in the market for some new clothes or new collapsible chair that you can bring camping. So what I would say is this, you're moving on from buying something you buy regularly to something that you feel you need. I'll give an example. You need a school bag or you need a carrier bag. It is not an item you buy routinely, let's say every month or every 2 months, right? What it means is you've recognized a problem. It means if you go back to, the previous slide, that you've recognized a problem, you look for information, you evaluate alternatives, make a purchase decision, but it is not a decision that will take you a long time to decide. It is a decision that you can make when you realize that the problem exists and you're looking for the best possible alternatives for the best bag that is best value for money. Now, in this case, you might not go for the most expensive. You would probably go for the most that gives the best value for money, to say, oh, you know what, there's an expensive range, there's a cheap range, and there's one at the center. The one right at the middle is possibly the one that is decently durable, considering the amount of money you have in your pockets, and you see that it's a bit of more value for money. You will go ahead to make that purchase. And the one that is more extensive is the extensive decision making, which I would say, for example, you want to buy a car, or you want to buy a house, or you want to buy something of an asset that would shake your pocket significantly. In this case, the consumer would typically go through all of the 6 processes normally. And another item that is probably not included in this, that is most important again, is during that information search, right? In that case, if you're buying something that is more or less of a high involvement product, you would want to get referrals. You want to speak to people that have bought it before. You would want to get thoughts from friends and family, how they feel about the products that you've chosen to buy. In this case, it is a higher involvement product. It takes significant amounts of time to decide to buy that product. And once you eventually buy that product, evaluating the product is very, very important to you as a person. More often time than not, you would get to that purchase decision making, and then you go back to information search, evaluate alternatives again, go back to information search, evaluate alternatives again. So you finally decide to make your purchase. I mean, except if you are one of the wealthiest people in Nigeria, I don't expect that one would want to buy a car or a house and just decide they'll buy the car or the house that very moment on that same day without even consulting people and getting feedback from people. And then the one that is the elephant in the room, impulsive buying. These are items that are not routine. They are not limited decision. They are not extensive decision. I would give you an example. I'm sure a lot of us must have come across, I'll talk about this from a physical store. You go to a supermarket and you put a list of items at the counter where you make the payments. Not very expensive. They'll probably put sweets. They'll probably put maybe plantain chips and all of those other random things. And what it is that you have gone to purchase a particular item. You don't need this item. They are not a routine purchase item, but you see them and you most likely buy them just because they are available there and then. For instance, at the supermarket, they tell you, oh, we don't have 100 naira change. Oh, there's sweets, 3 sweets for 100 naira, pick it and pay and go. Those are more or less like impulse buying. And those impulse buys do not necessarily go through any of this consumer buying journey. They're just available at the time and you see it and, you pick them and you buy them. And an example of how that happens online as well is when you're trying to buy an item and they put there, those who bought this also bought this in addition to it, and maybe they throw in one or two discounts there to say, oh, if you buy this bundle together, you would get a discount for buying it. You didn't intend to buy it in the first place. You don't necessarily need it, but they've thrown it to your face and you've seen it, and then you would most likely, buy it. So all of these items have different categories. Now, depending on the kind of item you as a business person are selling would determine, how long of a time and how long of a period it will take your consumer to decide to buy from you. And I think it's important to understand these patterns of how consumers buy before we go into, a full conversation, because at the end of the day, what we are trying to do here is to let you understand how to sell to consumers and how to be able to meet the consumers at the point of, their need. And the most important and the basic thing is, you as a business that wants to sell a product, it's meant to, where the consumer is trying to make information search, you are available for the consumer to find you where they need information. You are there where, the consumer is trying to make the final decision. At least your product even has to be available. Now, one more thing that I think is important for us to look at again is, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It might sound very cliche. It might sound like, oh, you know what? These are things that we've spoken about in school. We talk about in school all of the time. But at different points in the consumer's life, what the consumer buys is determined by the position the consumer is in life, how much money is in the pocket of the consumer. And we know for a fact that at the bottom of the pyramid is physiological needs, right? For example, I don't even need to give examples. Human beings generally need these physiological needs to survive. I mean, the need for air, the need for water, the need for food, the need for clothing, the need for shelter. one example, people would always eat. People have to eat, right? Now, what you eat can vary from, people to people, depending on, how much food they need at the time and, the kind of money they have. And I would also say the kind of position they're in life. But on a basic level, every human being needs to be able to breathe, needs to be able to drink water to survive, needs to eat, and needs to be able to put clothes on their body, and needs to have a place to live. Now, when you move from that to the second stage of the pyramid, where you're talking about job security, financial security, protection from animals, family security, health security, at least if you've been able to cover the basic needs that would keep you alive, then you're onto that level of, oh, you know what, I need to make sure that my health is at top shape. I need to make sure that at least I am secured enough. It is a person that has a house to live that would say, oh, my house needs to be secure. It's a person that has a house to live and has all the basic needs that would say, you know what, I'm trying to sort of, put money aside to save money, or I'm trying to get a loan to do this or do that. Now, after that point, you have the social needs, which includes the need for love, affection, care, belonging, and friendship. That is when you start to talk about, being part of a community, being in communities, and being able to socialize with people. And I think typically, people's needs significantly change around this period of time. I think that's the time you start to get to a point where you want to start to join associations, you want to start to join the likes of clubs, and all that. Your need significantly changes. So I would say, for example, if you want to indulge in, let's say, alcohol, for instance, I mean, somebody that hasn't eaten, that hasn't had water to drink, would not ordinarily say, you know what, I'm going to take alcohol over food or over water to drink. And then, by the time you're getting to that point of social needs is when you go out to have social drinks with friends, to catch up with your friends and colleagues and say, okay, let's hang out and have drinks. That typically lets us understand that, oh, the people that come to, for example, if you sell drinks, the people that come to buy alcohol are people that have gotten to a particular point in life with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The other stage is at a point where you start to, when you have that esteem need, right? Where you want to start to feel that sense of confidence, competence, and achievements, right? And you want to feel free. At that point, you're about getting to the peak. I mean, you have that social needs covered. I think at that point in time, some people might even want to decide to say, rather than going out to have drinks with a couple of friends, I'll probably sit down in my house and have drinks in my house with a couple of my other big friends and have, top of the range, the more expensive drinks to have in the house. And, the final stage is self-actualization, right? At this point, you're looking for recognition, power, status, and attention and admiration. It's the highest point as far as Maslow's hierarchy of needs is concerned. At this point in time, there's a quest for power. Beyond quest for power, there is a quest for, I would say maybe more of dominance, a quest to be identified and recognized as people that are literally top of the food chain. Now, depending on whatever category anyone is at this point in life, would determine as well how they consume and what they consume. I mentioned earlier that except you are probably one of the top people in this country, you ordinarily. So I'll give an instance. If someone that is at a social need point in life wants to buy a car, and somebody that is at a sexual self-actualization point in life wants to buy a car, the time it takes, the involvement is longer. While me that I'm probably at the social need in life will probably take 1 month or 2 months to decide on the particular car I want to buy and how I want to put up the money and ask questions all over the place. Somebody that has a self-actualization need point in life would probably go there, go to the shop, pick up a Rolls Royce and ask for a few customizations, pay and ask for it to be delivered. I mean, the conversation will never be long. It is hardly ever long. So an understanding of this also helps us know the kind of customers we are engaging based on the products we have, how we want to engage a customer, and how long it might take for us to be able to close a deal depending on the products that we or service that we sell. I mean, I want us to have a bit of an interaction here. But I think we may have to use the chat box. But typically, the question I want to ask is, I want to have a sense of, some of us in the room's buying cycle, right? I mentioned something about toothpaste the other time, right? Can somebody explain to me in the room, if you were going to buy a toothpaste and how you'd approach the toothpaste that you buy? I think it's okay for us to use the chat box if we cannot, because I think we might not be able to unmute. Or Funke, are we able to take questions from people?
We can take questions that they use in the chat box.
Okay.
Responses have started coming in.
Okay. Okay. So so the main question is, if you want to buy that particular toothpaste you buy every time, is it that you ask people and say, oh, you know what, the Colgate that I buy, as I think as someone mentioned, oh, is it good? Can I keep using it? Or you just go to the supermarket and just look for the Colgate? You go to where toothpaste is being sold, you look for the Colgate and purchase it. Or do you still start to, look at all of the toothpaste that you have on the aisle to finally decide when you use Colgate? I think it was Nikia that put that comment in there that I have a preference for Colgate. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I would say between Rukayat and Nikia, if you were to buy a car today and you're trying to shop for a car today, how would you approach buying a car as against when you want to buy your toothpaste? What would you do differently? Okay. Brilliant. Wait, sorry, Chidima, did you say you just go and buy the brand you're used to if you want to buy a car? Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. All right. So great. Brilliant. So we see that there's a difference in how consumers would approach buying a car and buying toothpaste. For the toothpaste group of people, right? They may have gone through that entire process and they are used to buying a particular toothpaste. All that is required to do is to make sure the toothpaste is available when consumers want to buy, right? Because they already know the toothpaste, you don't need a lot of work. But for somebody that sells a car, it means that you need to be able to make sure that the consumer is able to get as much information as possible, and they're able to sort of relate and have information, the highest level of information they can get before they make that final decision, beyond having the vehicle available. That point of evaluation and that point of information is very, very important for somebody that wants to buy a vehicle as against somebody that wants to buy a toothpaste, right? It is typically not, it's typically not the same thing, which means that for somebody that wants to sell a car, you need to be able to make sure that the person that wants to make the decision needs to have In fact, more than enough information to make that decision. Whereas, description for you that you want to sell a toothpaste can be very simple. Oh, it helps whiten your teeth. If that is what your toothpaste does. It helps you have fresh breath for 12 hours. I mean, if you're supposed to brush 2 hours a day, I'm sorry, twice a day. Now, for somebody that wants to buy a car, you need to be able to put all of the information available. So, for example, spare parts available, mechanics available. This car can do this car can do that. So the information that you need to be able to provide as a business to consumers, if you're going to be selling a product like a car, is not the same thing as, if you're going to be selling a toothpaste to a consumer. Yeah, so people are still putting in their comments. I will take my time to research, do my due diligence, because this is a high-end purchase that would shake my pocket. Exactly. I will go as far as speaking to the mechanic to know which of the brands suits my purpose of choice. Exactly. You would keep asking questions, try to get information, as much information as you can to make your final decision. Thanks, guys. It's been very helpful, at least getting the perspective from everybody so we know we're on the same page. So we're going to move on to the next category. So again, advertising being available, product availability is one thing. One thing I like to do again is to take us through, what the advertising process is, to take the AIDA model and key advertising process. I mean, not necessarily advertising again. At the end of the day, you want to be able to close sales, but you see all of those problems and those consumer behaviors and how consumers act at different points where they are. We can sort of relate it to how we're going to make sure that we connect to the consumers at different points, right? What the AIDA model simply means is you as a person, you as a business, right? One, you need to be able to create awareness, which means at a very high level, right? If people don't know your product exists, if people don't know your service exists, they can never be interested. People will typically only know and be interested in a product that they know exists. I mean, they have a need, right? They have identified a problem. And if they are unaware that your product exists, there's no way they're going to be able to show any interest in your product. The truth is, nobody has an exclusivity of selling anything or owning anything, right? There are tons and millions of products and services and service providers out there. And what it means is that you as a business need to be able to create brand awareness or affiliation with your product or service, right? That is you from a business point of view. Now, whilst you're doing that, you need to be able to generate the interest of the consumer. And I would say categorically that the point where you're able to, between, interest and desire, is where you are able to access that point, that emotional point of your consumers to be able to decide to choose you at the end of the day. Your customer can be aware of you, but might not be interested in what you do. This goes to show from beyond the product or service, the manner at which you communicate the products you have, the manner at which you engage with the consumers, the manner at which you speak to the consumers, even if it is not about the product itself. You as a business, the way you as a business engage the consumers can be the difference between, the customers being interested and, have a desire for your product. But the AIDA model, inverses the pyramid upside down to say, at the biggest level, right, you have a lot of work to do in terms of awareness. People would be aware, people might be interested, but people might not even reach out to you or communicate to you till they're starting to, like what you do and having an interest in what you do. And by the time they have a desire, they will contact you, they will reach out to you, and then, they'll ask you for more information. That is where you connect at a point where, that trying to make a decision, because a consumer speaking to you about your product or service is probably not speaking to only you about your products and services. It's probably speaking to 2 or 3 other people who might be selling exactly the same thing you sell, right? How you're now able to move them from being interested to desire your products is now left to you as the business. And at the end of the day, your consumer would take the action to buy. So meaning that while you are creating awareness, which can be through every means possible, we have so many channels, and it's not limited to, you just going out and saying, oh, this and that. At least we live in a digital world where with as little as, I think, 5,000, 10,000 naira, you can decide to promote your products on Facebook all the way to Instagram. You can even decide to go to like a GG, for instance, to list your product and probably just even sponsor the product or service you want to sell for a period of time for as low as maybe 2,000 naira. But, when you've created that awareness for people to see, how do you engage and how do you interact with the consumer when the consumer finally reaches out to you? And how are you able to help the consumer, take an action? Finally, obviously, if you are selling a service, when the action is going to be taken, or do you tell the consumer to pay? I mean, the consumer will finally take an action. Now, one important thing that I will also say again, that will still connect back to the information search and alternatives is, if you sell a product to a consumer today, the consumer has taken an action. What do you do with the consumer that you have sold the product with? And more often than not, we tell people that the best way and the best marketing you can do, right, is to be able to create some level of after-sales service, right? A consumer has bought from you today. If your product is good, the consumer may come back. The consumer may or may not come back. But if you're able to create some sense of loyalty with the customer retention after sales service, right, you have created a fan. In fact, you may have created a fan for life. People would trust information shared by somebody that has used a product or service before than somebody that is just aware of the product or service. So while you're trying to retain customers, you can go ahead to start to get reviews from the customers. So for example, you've sold a service or you've sold a product. You can go back to the customer, ask for a feedback from the customer. At least once you ask for a feedback from the customer feels you are concerned about their welfare. And also, you can use the customer as an advocate for your products, by putting them in referral programs. Or if you refer a customer to me, maybe your next product or your next service will be at a discount of 5 or 10%. There are different other ways where you can use to retain your customers. And at the end of the day, you will go to the likes of the e-commerce sites that exist today. The first thing you want to do is to go and look at the reviews. How many 5-star reviews does this person have? How many 4-star reviews? What are the bad reviews? What have people said? People that have bought or used the product said about the product. It helps, new people that are at that information and evaluation search make a decision quicker, because people will typically look at and try to find out how people that have used the product or service before feel to make their own final decision, which is very, very important. So, as I was speaking earlier, how we connect the dots. I think I may have said a bit of how this works, but your awareness as a business is going to solve or be able to get your consumers at a point where they're where they identify that there's a problem and where they're looking for information. As I mentioned earlier, a consumer would only buy, right? Or a consumer would only know a product or know a seller or know a business if the business has information that is available. If the business does not have information available, right, does not have information available, again, there's no way they are going to be able to show that they have interest. So during the consumer buying journey on the right side, the approach you would take as a business on the left side is to create awareness of your program, of your product and service. And that means of you creating a bit of interest in the consumer line is where you're able to meet your consumers where they are evaluating alternatives. because as I said, they will not be checking only you out. They'll be checking out a couple of other people to make their decision. And as I said, it's still dependent on the type of product or service the consumer wants to buy. In the case of bread or toothpaste, the consumer probably knows the bread or toothpaste he wants to buy, and all they just need is for the products to be available, right? The decision is not long. But in the case of more involved products, you need to be able to generate that interest for the consumers, and then, you know, for the purchase decision, you need to be able to turn that interest into a desire to want your product. And action, where consumers are going to be making their final purchase decision. Now, the retention bit is where you are able to do a post-purchase evaluation. Ensure that the consumer does a post-purchase evaluation by, you know, throwing a bit of retention plans and retention ideas there. And some of the examples I gave is, you know, you come in to say, you know what, dear customer, what do you think about the products? Do you like the products? What do you think we can improve? You know, by engaging with the consumer directly, and even saying, oh, you know what, if you've enjoyed our service, tell a friend, tell another friend. If another friend comes as a referral from you, I'll give you a 10% discount the next time you come. These things work, especially if you've provided a good service or you've sold a good product to your consumer. So that's literally about it in terms of understanding consumer behavior and what your role as a business is at different points in time. We can have a discussion ahead to, you know, speak about, you know, different channels that exist and some of the questions you may have from your end that you need me to answer.
Thank you very much for that wonderful session. We've learned so many things today, from consumer buying journey to how consumers buy. You've taken us back to school by reminding us of the Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs. And you brought it all together, the ADA model and the consumer buying journey. It has indeed been an insightful experience. Please post your questions in the chat box so that we can ask those questions from our speaker today. Okay, the first question here says, for how long can awareness lead to action and retention? How long does it take for awareness to lead to action and retention?
So I would say awareness will not necessarily lead to action and retention. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, it depends on what the product or service is, right? Bread, for example, as I mentioned, all you need to do is, one, make sure your product is available. And the only other thing you need to do is to let people be aware that your product is available. In a case of bread, the person that needs to buy the bread would see that, oh, yes, this product is available, and make the final purchase. In a case of a high involvement product, right, after the awareness is done, there's still a long process of, you know, the person evaluating whether to make that decision or not. So I would say it's typically dependent on, you know, the product or service you are selling. It's not cast in stone. It's really not cast in stone. It's just for us to be able to say that depending on the product I have, right, for a low involvement product, I need to have the product and service available first. And I need to let people know that the product is available. And I think with that, you've done your own bit of the work. The only other thing you can focus on is say, oh, you know what, retention, you know, after sales service. Oh, you know what, this person has brought bread from me. I would, you know, create an additional service to say, oh, for every 10 you buy from me, I will give you free delivery. That is if it's from an e-commerce point. You know, those are all the other ways that you can use to approach that. But again, it's not cast in stone. It depends on the products that you sell, and it depends on, you know, how the customers approach the product. It's not really cast in stone.
Thank you very much. And while we wait for more questions, I have this question here. How do you differentiate between a customer that is on the esteem need level of hierarchy of needs from the self-actualization customer? How do you
Sorry,
differentiate?
I didn't get that. I was trying to even read it.
I said, how do you differentiate a customer that is on the esteemed need of hierarchy of needs from a self-actualization customer?
Well,
Things they want are similar. Things that they desire are similar.
yes, and I think it's just the motive that is different. They would want similar things, but somebody that is at a self-actualization point in life is probably just trying to make an impact in people's lives. Oh, you know what? I want to be like a philanthropist. I want to be able to, do a foundation and take people out of poverty. And somebody that is a self-actualization is trying to sort of be seen, be reverenced, most likely at every point in time and wherever it is they go. I would say the esteemed self is more carefree. They just want to live free, be happy. At that point in time, money is not a problem. So money is not what they really think about, but they just want to just be free, Yeah.
Thank you. Can you give us examples on how to inspire customer interest?
Okay. I would say how you can inspire customer interest. How do you if a customer has reached out to you, the customer has reached out to you because the customer has been able to have some level of interest. One, so how I'll use e-commerce, right? And I'll use maybe like an e-commerce marketplace like Adedeji, for example. You have a product, you've put a price tag on it, you put negotiable, right? There are probably like, 500 other people that have that product. You've decided to promote the product, the customer has seen it. The customer may have reached out to you based on how you've put the summary of the products there. How interesting is the summary that you've put on the product that has made the customer want to reach out to you? Some people might just say, for example, they want to sell a car, they have a car, they put a price there, they don't even put a description or nothing there, right? How is the customer able to at least get some level of more information? Then if the customer needs more information, they come to ask you. It's all dependent on your approach, how you speak about your products. Because even if you do a social media post and you say you want to promote on Instagram, for example, that interest bit is what are you promoting and how have you put the copy of what you're promoting and the look and feel of what you're promoting there that'll make the customer interested. So I can just put a blank black background and put, oh, I sell eggs or I sell chicken, right? And that is all I've put there. But I haven't made my design and creative colorful enough for the consumer to see it and be like, this looks interesting. Let me even ask, how many they have. Are you going to give me a discount or not? Or can you do deliveries or do I have to come and pick up myself? It's about how the products you have or service you have is being displayed. If you want to take it to the physical stores, for example, how do you arrange your products on the aisle? If you go to the open market, you see some people that they want to arrange milk and then they arrange it like a triangle to make it look more interesting. So people outside can see and want to look at it and ask you more information. It all depends on how your product and service is being presented to the consumer at the end of the day. Now, that desire, between that interest and desire points is where you're able to engage with the consumer, where the consumer comes to ask you more information because the consumer is interested. How are you able to convert the person from somebody that is interested to somebody that desires and wants to buy your product? It is all based on how your product is being presented, really.
Thank you. The next question says, please, what's your opinion about price tags when advertising on social media? Although this person says, especially when the target is B2B. Well,
it's a very dicey. Truth is, it's not dicey, right? I know that we're trying to speak about B2C here, but I'm an advocate of give the consumer as much information as possible for the consumer to make a decision. Now, I'm not an advocate of DM for price. And I would be clear why I think I'm not an advocate of DM for price. You have the opportunity to let your consumer know if the consumer can afford your product or not, right? But you've asked the consumer to DM for price. More often time than not, people that can afford it would rather not even DM for price because they just want to know how much it costs and take that decision there and then if it's something they're interested in. But it might be a bit different for a B2B because a B2B might want to sell to another business based on quantity and have a completely different price. So for example, if I'm doing a B2B and I'm selling a product and you want to buy the product in bulk, obviously there's always a quantity discount, and you're trying to avoid an information overload to say, oh, if you buy between this and this, you get this. If you buy between this and this, you pay this. Then in that case, B2B does not necessarily, have to put the price tag there because, business to business would always engage with you further. You have more engagement, more conversation, because at the end of the day, their profit points is what they're really concerned about. But for a B2C, you need to have a standard price where your products and service go for. And it just does not make sense to be asking people to DM for price, taking them through an extra action to find just a simple basic information as price.
Thank you. This person is asking, how do you deal with changing customers' behavior in terms of changing wants? The person gave an example that in case someone has a bakery and usually make plain whole loaf bread, but after a while, the person noticed that sales dropped. And this is because the consumer shifted from plain loaf bread to wheat bread or coconut bread. So as a seller or a business owner, do you stick to the product you were doing before, which is plain whole loaf bread, or seek out for other customers? Or do you diversify to satisfy the new demands of customers?
So customers' needs evolve, right, from time to time. If you look at the consumer journey bit and the IDA model bit that I put there that I spoke about retention, you as a business have to constantly be in communication with your consumers. If you're close to your consumer enough, right, as your consumer needs evolve, you know that their needs are evolving on a day-to-day, and you also have to evolve with the customer. So if you do your post-purchase evaluation, by asking further questions after you've provided a service for the customers, because again, for example, if you sell bread, it means that there's a high tendency that your consumer buy bread from you maybe every other day, maybe once a week, right? Occasionally, maybe once a month, have a conversation with them, find out from them. That's more or less you still doing your, you trying to get the customer to do a post-purchase evaluation with you. With that, you can sort of evolve with the customer need. So before you lose the customer to someone else because, you sell plain bread and the customer is wanting coconut bread, the customer would have told you about coconut bread. Oh, you know what? I've seen coconut bread out there and it seems nice. Is this something you can start to do? Because you're getting information from the consumers, like you're getting referrals from the consumer, and you're getting the consumer to sort of sort of evaluate the products that you have. Customers' needs and consumers' needs is not stagnant. It will continue to evolve. It will continue to change time to time. And that's why you need to be in close contact with the consumers to be with them as their needs start to evolve.
Thank you. Our next question says, what's the most efficient result-oriented medium to get the best awareness out there? Using a pragmatic example that has been empirically tested by you in your field.
It depends. So there's no one-way answer to these things. But I would say from my experience, right? Above the line media. So in terms of doing advertising, now depending again on what you sell and depending on what you intend to achieve. Again, there are two different schools of thoughts today that would say online, if you can afford it. Oh, rather than put your money to give an influencer, that huge amount of money, use it to create some sort of advert on, social media, and then you'll be able to get some level of awareness. I would say I'm an advocate of, using influencers, but using influencers wisely. And that is strictly dependent on the product you're selling at the level your product is. So for example, I have a new product and nobody has seen these products before. Nobody has engaged with these products before. You have influencers out there that have a huge following, they have huge eyeballs, they have huge content. I mean, they have a huge fan base for content, right? At the end of the day, if the influencer has 70-80% of the people that are within the category of my target audience, right? I may not be doing it because I expect it to end up in translating in purchase, but I know that I want to get as many people as possible to see the product and to know the product exists. In that case, using that influencer to promote the product because it's a new launch would be great, because you know that at least strategically, the influencer has 80% of the people that are within my target audience as a fan base. But I would say the best way to go about it is to do a 360-degree approach, if you can afford it, is to do the normal above the line. You can decide to go through the route of, putting promoted posts on Instagram. From putting promoted posts on Instagram or IG and the rest of the social medias that exist, in combination to that, you can use an influencer, and as well, to be able to drive eventual purchase, you can decide to put a little bit of incentive in there. And again, it's always dependent on budget and how much you're willing and you have to spend. But at the end of the day, it still depends on you as a person, really, and the reason why you're doing this. But one thing I always advocate for is, if you are going to promote any product online, you need to be able to give, the people that are seeing it an opportunity to be able to close the deal in case they want to close the deal. So for example, you don't need to have your personal websites to close deals. You can just decide to probably list in a marketplace that exists. I think some of these other fintechs have series of marketplaces, there are e-commerce sites that exist, to be able to close it with a call to action. So even if you're trying to drive awareness using an influencer and promoting on social media, you can, also put a link there where, consumers are able to take a final action, just in case they want to take a final action, even though it might not even really be the main purpose of, driving that much level of awareness. But, give the consumer an opportunity to be able to purchase the product if they so choose to purchase the product, because there are some people that don't really need to go through that line and those entire processes.
Thank you. This question here says, how do you respond to negative review on social media?
I would say the reason for, a negative review is a feedback, right? It is really a feedback. It's genuinely a feedback. And what I would say in this case is, if you have a negative review on feedback, a negative review as a feedback, you need to go back and evaluate your product or service, right? Before you even respond to anything, do a self-evaluation. Somebody has given you a negative feedback. Now, we understand that consumers might be very funny. Because at the end of the day, you will look at, sites, and then you see somebody put a 1 star. While the person has put a 1 star, which is very negative, the consumer can go ahead and put it there that, oh, the product is good, but it was delivered to me late. And that's the reason the person has given a 1 star. That's if the person even gives more information. But whatever it is, it's feedback. And I think, first of all, you need to look at your process, look at where you missed out in the process for your product and service. Now, if you're able to check and you realize that, oh, you know what, there's a lag in your process, something has gone wrong, I think it's important to reach out to that consumer and try as much as possible to use that negative opportunity, to buy in a loyal customer. You can also go ahead to decide to give the person a free offer or something, and let them be assured that the process that there's a lag in has been fixed, and put an incentive to sort of ease the consumer out of it. And if you're able to take a consumer that is disgruntled, move the consumer from that disgruntled point to being satisfied, that same consumer would be the one to go ahead and start advocating, oh, they had a bad day, they had a bad situation. So you want to deliver something and maybe the dispatch, muddled up the order, and then the customer is upset, gives you a bad review. You decide, oh, it's not so expensive. Okay, I'm going to, return it. I'll speak to you myself, reach out to you myself, get another dispatch to deliver, have a one-on-one conversation with the person, and then offer the person a discount for the next purchase. The consumer will be the one to come and start telling people that, oh, you know what, the person was just having a very bad day. It's dispatch that messed up this person's order. You have been able to turn around that process. But I would say if you get a negative review, the first thing you need to do is go back and evaluate your process, find out where the mistake and where the problem is. And in case of difficult consumers, some of them would exist that they are just very problematic and just want to cause problems. If you have consistently been doing very well with your other consumers and your other consumers evaluate you positively, when there is a problematic consumer that is just out to just destroy your business, you would have at least 10 or 15 other people that know your business, rate and respect your business, that would speak for you in that case. All you just need to do is to lay out the situation plainly as it is, and let every other person that are your actual real customers that are loyal to you be the ones to take on that conversation. But more often time than not, if you get a negative review, it's an opportunity for you to evaluate your process and find out where the problem actually is, so you can solve it.
Thank you for that. Kindly give us examples of strategies that can be used to promote a product.
There are no two ways about promoting your product, advertising really. And in a case where you're unable to, again, so when we talk about advertising, everybody thinks, oh, money. Now, what I've realized and what I've come to realize in the years is that you can spend 20 naira and it feels like you spent 100 naira. You can spend 100 naira and it feels like you spent 20 naira, right? Digital world has made things very, very interesting, right? People would typically say videos are more engaging than still images, but I think there has to be a lot of creativity that would go into the advertising that you want to use to promote what you have. And there's another thing I tell people as well. If it is a case of no money, I'll give an example. You don't necessarily need to spend a lot of money. And I think somebody mentioned something at some point that if you're a small business and you're starting off, you might not be able to give personalized services like the likes of Jumia, Konga, and maybe like Amazon would do. But because you have a small customer base, you're starting off, you can give personalized service. The personalized services that you're giving can help you develop having advocates that would be the one to refer people to you. So if you focus on your product and service to make sure your product and your service is good, I mean, again, service, you are the one providing the service, which is entirely up to you on how you approach it. A product, which might be a product you produce yourself or you resell the product from someone else. What kind of service do you provide? How are you able to personalize what you are doing for the customer with the product that is not even you that produces it? Can be the difference between A and B, and can be the difference between having all the customers you have tell their neighbors to tell 10 people, oh yeah, I got this thing from this person, I got this thing from this company, and the service was exceptional. And then they become your promotional they become your promotional advocates. In that case, you don't necessarily need to spend any extra money. You don't need to spend any other money. It's just you being personal with the kind of service you have provided to your customers. And in other cases, if you're going to be putting an advert out there, again, you can try to make it as creative and interesting and as engaging as possible, where if it's creative, engaging, and exciting, you will not necessarily need to spend too much money and it will reach a lot more people. Again, as I said, if you put a black background and put, oh, I sell chicken, and just post it there, people might see it and not even remember they saw it, right? Whereas somebody might, have a very creative design or have a very creative video that they've put out there, and one person sees it and the other person tells somebody else, and then they start sharing it around. So this is quite interesting. It can help you do a lot better than having to spend a whole lot of money. But I think it's up to you. But that referral bit, I think, is very, very important for any business. And it's at that point where you talk about post-evaluation. It will not even cost you any extra money. You've just been able to get somebody loyal to you because you've provided some level of personalized service, and that personalized service has translated into the person, talking to 10, 15 people to come and buy from you or to come and use your service. That will not cost you anything.
Thank you. This person here says all subsidy removal is imminent and it will definitely reduce the purchasing power of consumers because of the impact of increased transportation costs on final products. What can one do to cut costs in the supply chain so that one can stay competitive as regards pricing and still have products of good quality?
How am I supposed to answer this question now? I'll say in my experience, right? People are willing to pay more with the kind of service they get. Everybody knows if there's inflation in the country, nobody can say they are not aware that there's a level of inflation in the country. I mean, nobody can come to say that because it will affect every single person in the country. So in that case, if you need to increase prices, I would say that if you're left with no choice, please do go ahead to increase prices. But what kind of value add are you able to provide to the customer if you increase prices? I think it's something to think about. It doesn't necessarily have to be value addition that would cost you money. But it's something you need to think through as a business. Once you decide you want to increase price, you need to think of some level of value addition. And I think that's why most companies will say, because a product is getting expensive to produce, I would decide to produce a smaller bottle or a smaller case, so it's more accessible to my customers. Or they come with the idea of, oh, you know what, maybe you should even subscribe for this product for, the next 5 months and get a monthly supply of this product. and I would hold a particular price for you for this period of time. Again, them subscribing gives a guarantee that they're going to keep purchasing for a period of time. I mean, there just has to be some level of value addition that you're able to provide. But the truth is, I mean, by all means, if your cost of production or cost of sale is becoming less than what it costs you to provide that product or service, you don't have a choice. Your business is to stay afloat. You can go ahead and increase price, but that value addition can be the difference between, you increasing price and someone else increasing their price.
Thank you. So how does one decide which marketing channel to use to get to the target audience?
It depends on the product and service you have. I would say it depends on the product and service you have. Your target audience are in a channel. Once you're able to identify who your target audience are, then the channel you would typically advertise is the channels that has the highest number of people that are your target audience. That's just the simple way I can put it. Once you identify who your target audience is, you go for the channel that has the highest number of your target audience. And I think the information is always out there somehow, somewhere.
Okay, so how do you establish emotional connection between the consumer and your product and service to create desire for your product or service?
So it depends on the product. I think I've mentioned personalized service, for example. How you engage with the consumer. And I'll give you an example. I was going to buy something from, I think, Alaba a while back. And I think we were, haggling about price or no price, and then delivery or no delivery. And then the consumer said, and the business person said, oh, you know what, where do you want to deliver it to? I said, Ibadan, but I'll take it myself. And he came back with the idea of, oh, you know what, we always transport this thing to Ibadan. It might even be cheaper for you to get it to Ibadan than to get it to where you want to get to in Lagos. And he went through the route of speaking to me to say, oh, once he delivers the products to me, if I have any issues or I have anything I want to resolve or anything that does not work in the product, that I should please call him. He will be available to make sure that he resolves the problem as soon as he can. He has sort of, created some level of emotional connection, in that level where, oh, you know what, this person is as engaged and as interested as I am in trying to make sure that a customer is satisfied. The difference between interest and desire is just the manner of approach and how you engage with the customer. Because again, the customer has reached out to you because the customer has an interest, right? And the customer probably just needs you to be able to finally convince them. The value addition you provide, the kind of information you provide to the consumer, and the manner at which you provide that information can be the big difference. A consumer will reach out to you because they've seen their ad, your ad, they have an interest, and then they decide to, send you a chat or send you a DM on IG. And once they send you that DM and you're getting to a point where you're sounding very condescending and rude to the consumer, you're never going to get the consumer to move from interested to having a desire for the product. How you communicate with the consumer and how you're able to convince the consumer eventually. And I would say value add and, having respect for the consumer is always a good thing. It can help you close out a deal just by the consumer even saying, oh, you know what, I love the way this person spoke to me and I love the way this person was engaging with me. And I know it can be painstaking sometimes because you might have, out of every 20 customers that send you a DM, maybe it's just 2 of them that will eventually buy. But it is your responsibility to try as much as possible to communicate with everybody the way you communicate with the customer that is actually ready to buy till you meet that customer that will buy from you.
Thank you. How do you convince customers to buy products? What do you do to convince them to buy products?
I would say focus on the unique selling points and focus on the value added service you're providing to the customer. So for instance, a customer is coming to purchase and, the consumer is saying, I'm going to buy this quantity, or whatever it is. If it's comfortable for you as a value add, because the consumer is trying to buy a particular quantity, you can decide to throw a value addition of maybe like a free delivery, for instance. Yeah, focus on the unique selling points of your product or service. Every product or service, even before it becomes a final product or service, has a unique selling point that makes it different from, the other product or service someone else sells. Focus on the unique selling points and capitalize on the value-added service you have. Provide value-added service if you're able to.
How do you make a customer an advocate of your product or service?
After sales service. So if you have done everything that we've mentioned, I have been able to focus on the unique selling points. I close out the sale at the end of the day, and I make the customer do a post, because ideally, the customer will always do a post-purchase evaluation anyway. Either you ask the customer to do it or not. Because every time we buy a product, we sit down and we look at it and we feel, was this value for money? Do I like the product? Do I not like the product? Right? Even if you've been nice to the customer, you provided value-added service, right? You need to be able to engage with the consumer after, right? For the post-purchase evaluation. That post-purchase evaluation they've done without you, you need to be able to speak to the customer about it, right? Engage with the customer and let them provide that information to you. The fact that you have come to ask the customer to provide that post-purchase evaluation that they would do with or without you anyway, makes them feel, a sense of connection with you. And if you have been able to provide all this value added service and everything you've provided to the consumer, and the consumer has given you feedback, the customer would typically feel more emotionally connected to you. And at the end of the day, it might not even be about the product the consumer buys from you. It might just be a case of, because I feel emotionally connected to this person, I would always buy from this person. Again, some of the things you can throw out there is to sort of throw a referral program to the customer to let the customer know, you know what, you like our products, right? We are happy you love our product or service. So what we are going to do is, we don't want you to be the only person to enjoy this good product or service we provided to you. Can you share our service or product and service to a friend? And for every friend that comes, we give you a 5% or 10% discount whenever you come back to purchase from us. It does not mean that the person will not purchase from you anyway, because the person is already sort of connected to you in a way. But you've given the customer an incentive to want to talk to other people about it. And I think it might not really cost you much to do that, because at the end of the day, if you're going to be getting repeat customers come from a customer that you have, it's more income for your business, right? It's just to be able to be deliberate about it, to make sure that at least once you have finished a service or closed the deal, you go back to the customer and engage with the customer. The deal does not end after the customer has purchased from you.
Thank you. This person is asking, what do I do to get the customer that's promised to get back to me to buy from me?
You check in with the customer. It's as simple as that. Sometimes customers forget. Sometimes customers don't have the money at the time. Sometimes customers just want to have an information to be ready to purchase when they have the means to. If a customer has shown interest and you're waiting for the customer to get back, you can always reach out to the customer again. And when you realize, you know what, maybe part of the issues the customer is having is maybe the customer needs a bit of a discount. Maybe you provide, that value addition to just prompt the customer to buy. But at the end of the day, you need to prompt the customers for some number of times. If you come back to the customer once, twice, I would say you engage with the customer again like 3 different times. I mean, give it a gap period of time. If the customer has finally purchased, the customer will naturally tell you have purchased from someone else. And then obviously you won't bother and thank the customer and tell the customer, okay, when you need something else another day, you're available. But if the customer has not purchased, I think you give it a period of time to check in with the customer constantly. Do it like 2 or 3 times before you finally say, okay, maybe this customer is really not buying. But I don't see anything wrong in you going back to checking from the customer if the customer is still interested in purchasing. It's a normal thing that you would do.
This person is asking a question along career path. He says, how do you know you'll be successful in this choice of field? What were those attributes you discovered about yourself that made you venture into this, that were essentially your major driving force?
So I would say, anybody can be successful at anything, right? You can be successful at anything. You just need to be determined that you want to succeed at what you're doing. And I don't think there's anybody that started working today that would say the first day I went to work, they knew what they were doing or they knew what they were supposed to do. One, we as human beings were designed to evolve. We're designed to constantly learn. We're designed to constantly adapt. I would say be determined to succeed at what you're doing. Learn as much as possible. And also try to enjoy the journey. And I think, once you start and you have that mindset of, oh, you know what, I'm going to be better than I was yesterday at what I do, you will constantly improve on that field. And by all means, try to enjoy the journey. Enjoying the journey as well will make will make it easier for you to succeed while you keep learning. Truth is, anybody can succeed at anything. You just have to be determined to succeed and be determined to learn as much as possible to be better than you were yesterday. I think that's the most important thing. And don't forget to enjoy the journey. Be happy doing it, regardless of what it is.
Okay, this question says, how can I make customers find my business easily?
I think my first question is, what is your business first? Because it's not one size fits all. It's not one size fits all. No, you said, how can we make people find my business? And I said, it's not one size fits all. It depends on what the business is.
Okay, this person didn't mention what sort of business it is.
But what I would, pardon?
Maybe you give us some instances.
So, I would say there are so many channels that exist today where you can promote your business, especially on digital platforms and digital channels. I mean, it has made the possibilities endless. At least you have a business. Whatever the business is, product or service. If your products or service are the kind of products that you can decide to, okay, food business, for example, is there are marketplaces that exist today. There are a bunch of fintechs out there that have marketplaces. I would say list on those marketplaces. If you're not interested in listing on those marketplaces, I would say social media again is a very good platform where you are able to let people find your business. So if you have a social media page that is dedicated for your food business, it's easy for you to, well, first of all, let the page represent exactly what it is that you sell, not something else, that people would come to your page and what they would see is, oh, this business is a food business. Once you have been able to do that, I would say the first thing to do is to probably beckon on family and friends to share the business that you do. It's always a thing of family and friends first. Your family and friends are going to be your first advocates. From your family and friends being your first advocates, they'll probably bring in somebody that is not a family and friend. And then you have people that are outside of your family and friend circle. But once you're able to list on social media, it's so amazing that with any amount of money, close to maybe 5,000 or 10,000 naira, you can promote your food business in Lagos or wherever it is within a geographical location. So meaning that if I want to do a promotion, for example, in Lekki, if I spend 10,000 naira to do promotions in Lekki for 2 weeks, it means I'll be able to get more people to see my business than me saying, I want to spend 10,000 naira in the whole of Nigeria. It's more efficient that way, and it's an easier way to be able to get people outside of your followership on social media who are family and friends and other people that family and friends are brought in to see and engage and view your business. That's the basic level. If you now want to go further, you can now decide to probably list in any of the marketplaces that exist today. And I think a lot of those fintechs have those marketplaces exist where you can list and then, have your products there listed at the top of, as one of the options for products and services they put in the forefront of their store and marketplace. But I would say family and friends are your first go-to.
Thank you very, very much. It's been an insightful experience. Thank you for your time, for staying up to now to the end of the session. Thank you, Mr. Adedeji Layade. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the lessons you put out there for us. We really appreciate it. We can't thank you enough.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone.
Bye for now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yes. You said that you can please rewatch.